9th of June. We have our agenda printed in the back if you'd like to follow along, which we will try to do up here. Now, sometimes I have to be reminded. But anyway, we'll get started, and I'll ask at this point if you would stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Following that, Councilman Poole will offer an invocation.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Let us bow our heads. Oh God, as we begin our meeting, we seek your counsel and guidance. Inspire and rule over our deliberation. Direct us in our thinking and guide us as we work for you. The town of Edenton, our county, and those that we meet and greet every day. We pray for the police officers, Austin Wynn, who will be deployed with the National Guard unit into Kuwait, and likely will be deployed from there to Iraq and Afghanistan. Pray for his safety and his comrades' safety, and also pray for Officer Wynn's family, especially his wife Amanda and their son Dallas. We also pray and thank God for the healing of our town managers, Anna Marie. We ask all of these blessings in the name of our Father God and Jesus Christ. Let us say amen.
Amen. Amen. Amen. Thank you, sir. As a follow-up to what Reverend Poole referenced in his invocation, just like to carry on with the thought of Officer Austin Wynn being deployed with his National Guard unit. This is not the first time that we've had one of our employees deployed for active service in the military. We're always thankful for their service, not only to this community, but also to our nation in the capacity that Officer Wynn is serving now. So if you all would please come forward. We have a gift that we would like to present to your wife while you are away as a constant reminder that you and she and little Dallas are loved by this community, and that we will support you in any way we can while you're away.
Thank you, sir.
Yes, sir. Thank you for your military service and your service to our community through the police department.
Thank you, sir.
How you doing, big boy? Huh? You'll be grown up when he gets back, right? How long is your deployment?
A year.
1 year?
I'll be gone around
Okay.
12 months.
There's some gift certificates in there for you to enjoy in our downtown business district while he's away. So, all the best. We look forward to your return. All right.
Yeah, thank you, sir.
Be safe.
Can we get a picture with you and your family and the mayor and the council?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. So maybe you all can gather around the front and we'll take a picture.
Okay.
She'd like it.
Yeah.
I know.
I let the stakes ones go first.
That'd be too long to get together.
Okay, you gotta tighten up just a little
Yeah.
bit. That is great.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. As most of you are aware, the Edenton Town Council budgets funds to be appropriated to various organizations that serve this community. And as a result of that, we ask that the organization leadership come before the Town Council and give us an update on their activities in the past year and how things look going forward. Tonight, we're pleased to have from the Albemarle Hope Line, Courtney Cottrell, who is the relatively new Executive Director of the Albemarle Hope Line, and she is going to share with us what she has discovered since she's been in that employment and what her plans are for the future. So, Courtney, nice to have you with us.
Thank you for having me. I put together a PowerPoint at council's request, but I'm generally not that formal, so if I go off script, please excuse me. As Mayor said, I am new to my position. I started with Albemarle Hope Line back in August as the grants manager and assumed the position of executive director in January. Most of my prior experience is at Kids First Child Abuse Treatment Center, so I have a decade of experience in victim services, just moving from one victim population to a very similar victim population. I think Anne-Marie and I were discussing that the town's been supporting Hope Line for about a decade, give or take, and I cannot overemphasize our gratitude for that support. Albemarle Hope Line has been serving northeastern North Carolina for nearly 40 years, and although I am new to my position, I have multiple staff who have been with us for 20 or 30 years. So there's not a whole lot new to report. Hope Line's been very stable, and I just kind of want to give you an update of the services that are available to all the members of the community. I left a lot of brochures and business cards. Please rain them around. I don't want there to be a single victim in our community that doesn't know about the services that are available to them. Our fancy mission statement is we are a private nonprofit organization dedicated to providing comprehensive, direct, and preventive services to victims of family violence, sexual assault, and teen dating violence. All of our services are free and confidential. And one of my greatest roles is trying to reduce as many barriers to service as we can here in our rural communities, whether that be transportation concerns, whether there are survivors that need more technology in order to access our services. We're looking into text response on our crisis line and things of that nature. The services that we offer and have offered for decades are, we have our 24-hour hotline, 24 hours a day, 365 days a year, and that's not always just for people who are in immediate crisis. Sometimes it's for people who are beginning the thought of safety planning, who are starting to see some red flags in their relationships and just kind of want to know their options. The cycle that we see is we'll usually talk to someone on the crisis line 3, 4, 5 times before they actually come in for services. So I'll talk a little bit more later on that we have no wrong door to access services. We have support groups, court advocacy, counseling, emergency shelter. Our shelter is located in Elizabeth City. We have a 9-bedroom facility. We can sleep up to 36. We have private bathrooms, kitchen facilities, laundry facilities, and we do everything we can to make it feel like home while the residents are with us. Average stay is 2 to 4 months. We don't really put a cap on it. It really just kind of depends on the resources and support that a survivor already has and what connections we need to make for them. We also do a lot of community outreach, community education, prevention education. We would love to come and talk to your civic groups, your church groups. We do education in schools starting with kindergartners, talking about hands are not for hitting, all the way up through middle school. We start talking about healthy relationships and things like that. Really our mission would be to go out of business. We would love to see the elimination of domestic violence and sexual assault. So the more prevention and community education we can do, the better. So that's a task I put on everyone. If there's a single group, I will come talk to your book club. We would just love to get in front of people and talk about the resources that we have available. Our statistics for 2018, we served 716 individual victims in person. Of that, approximately 100 were from Chowan County, and we had 694 crisis calls. So if you put those together, we're looking at about 1,300 people that we helped. And it's not, as I said, always that immediate crisis. Sometimes these are people that suffered abuse years ago, and we're helping them still with counseling, job placement, things of that nature. I know you have a lot of important business to get to tonight, so I'm going to skip over a few of these things, but some of the statistics, I don't like to get bogged down in numbers. I just really like to remind people that these are not issues that happen to other people in other places. These are things that happen to our friends and neighbors, and statistically it's impossible that you don't know one person, multiple people who either have been affected by this type of violence or are still suffering through it, and just maybe have or have not shared that with you. Again, I'm not a big numbers person, except to say that I don't think it matters if it's 1 in 4, 1 in 10, 1 in 100. It's too many. Every 9 seconds in the United States, a woman is beaten or assaulted. And in 2017, there were 79 men, women, and children that were killed as a result of domestic violence in North Carolina. According to the CDC, half of all female homicides victims are killed by intimate partners. So women in our country are still more likely to be killed by their spouse or boyfriend than any other measure. So there's still a lot of work to be done. And when we talk about the types of abuse that we serve, it's not necessarily just the physical abuse. It can be emotional abuse, psychological abuse, sexual abuse. Financial abuse is one of the big things that we focus on, and the majority, about 90% of domestic violence cases, there's also been financial abuse, which is part of why victims stay in the relationship. They've usually been denied access to education. Either they haven't been allowed to work, or if they work outside the home, turn over all of their funds to their abuser. So that's something we really focus on, is connecting survivors with educational and employment opportunities in the long run. Human trafficking is kind of a hot topic in the media, but it's nothing new even to our communities. Anytime there's coerced sexual activity, forced prostitution, that is human trafficking. You can be human trafficked your entire life in one room. It doesn't necessarily involve the movement of people from one space to another. Stalking, especially in our technological age, is an increasing concern, and as we talk about things with bullying and things, we see this a lot playing out with teen dating violence, and especially with that technology where the abuser has access to their victims in new and sometimes frightening ways. And harassment, whether that be sexual harassment in the workplace, through social media, all of those types of factors. Some of the red flags, anytime I have the time to talk to anybody, I try to do a little bit of prevention work because, as I said, you never know who in your community may be in an abusive relationship and may not even see the warning signs just yet, because these types of relationships very rarely start off in a violent manner. Generally, an abuser starts out very loving and doting and slowly begins a cycle of isolation and abuse. We've talked a lot about some of the reasons that victims stay. Again, it's financial abuse, it's threats of not only what the abuser might do to the victim, but to their children, to their pets, to their family members, to their reputation. When we talk about this being something that crosses socioeconomic boundaries, if you are a person of stature in the community, just having that information get out about you is very frightening and might be enough to keep you in an unsafe relationship. The general cycle of abuse, as I said, we'll have people call 3, 4, 5 times before they come into services, and sometimes they have not left the relationship yet when they start coming in for services, and that's okay. We're still there to support them. And on average, a victim will attempt to leave at least 7 times before they get out for good, and that's when they are in the most danger. Their increase of homicide is about 75% higher in that leaving stage. So you can see why emergency shelter in a secure location would be so valuable. Helpline's probably better known for our work in domestic violence, but we also work with victims and survivors of sexual assault, whether that be adult survivors of child sexual abuse, whether that be rape survivors, incest survivors. anything of that nature. And again, this is not a problem that is going away or getting better. And it's almost never done by a stranger. It's almost always someone that is known by the victim, and those statistics get higher when we're talking about children. And again, with that technology factor playing in, there's now technology-related sex crimes such as sexting, sextortion. Again, that's why we are seeing people stay in abusive relationships. We have these pictures of you. Would you like these pictures to get out? Things of that nature. And again, a little bit of prevention work whenever I can get in front of people. If someone discloses to you that they are seeing this pattern or experiencing this type of abuse, please listen and believe them, and know that even though they have told you about the situation, that doesn't necessarily mean that they're ready to leave, and they need you to support them even if they choose to stay in the relationship and help them to be safe. Ask what they need. You can help refer them to legal options. One of the, again, speaking of technology, one of the simplest things that you can do for someone that has questions about the services that are available to them is let them use your phone, because a lot of times victims have all of their electronics are monitored by their abuser. So if they call us and try to get information, then a lot of times that's seen by their abuser. So give them access to your phone, give them access to some internet so they can look up, talk to us, to help make a safety plan until it's really safe for them to go. We don't want to rush anybody out of a situation until they have a good safety plan in place. Again, our crisis line, 24 hours a day, and it doesn't have to be this person is in immediate danger to call our crisis line. You can call just to find out about our services, find out when our next support group is. We will talk to you at 2 in the morning about any of those sorts of things, even if there's not an immediate danger to you or someone in your family. If it's a sexual assault, you can encourage someone to go to the hospital, and in North Carolina, you can have a rape kit done anonymously without involving law enforcement, so you can collect that evidence, think about your options before you move forward with the legal system. So all of those scary statistics, I get a little bit out of the way to talk to you about the investment that you're making in your community when you support our organization. Interpersonal violence is truly a public health issue, and the long-range effects of abuse are in the mental health arena. Obviously, we're talking about things like PTSD, anxiety, depression. A lot of people who have abusive histories turn to substance abuse as a way to self-medicate. It can affect their physical health. It can cause or exacerbate health conditions. We talked a little bit about the economic impact of victims having difficulty holding down jobs, whether that be because of their abusive history or because of the anxiety or mental health things that they're experiencing. Unwanted pregnancy can have huge repercussions, and that happens not only in cases of rape, but when women are isolated from birth control options and things of that nature. So we're not just talking about removing people from crisis. We're talking about these kinds of interventions that we can do to improve these outcomes. If we can help someone go from victim to survivor, if we can do intervention, do counseling work with them to reduce their trauma symptoms, you can see how over the course of a lifetime, we're really stabilizing our communities. And that's only speaking to the adult victims. And of course, you can see how the repercussions for children that grow up in a violent home would also suffer a lot of these long-term effects. So we work very closely with Kids First and other children's services organizations to get the children the counseling that they need. And without our treatment and support, these issues do result in higher healthcare costs, more strain on local resources, and things of that nature. So we are really focused on supporting survivors through their lifetime. When we do have people come in crisis, they're usually not ready for counseling right away. They need somewhere safe to stay. They need to know their children are safe. They need to find a job and then find a more permanent roof over their head. And they're usually not ready to do the work of addressing their trauma right away. So sometimes we'll see them back a year later, they're ready to come to a support group. 2 or 3 years later, maybe they're really ready to dive into counseling, mental health treatment. And even survivors who think they've completed treatment may experience re-traumatic symptoms, say if their case comes to court 3, 4, 5 years later, if they're entering a new relationship, if they're becoming a parent, and things like that. If you were raised in a violent household and then go on to become a parent yourself. A lot of times that's something that they'll come in for a little bit of guidance. I don't want my children to experience the same sorts of things that I did. Again, I don't think the numbers tell the story so much as our survivors tell their stories. These are a couple of anonymous comments that we got on our feedback surveys from clients we've served in the past few months. A couple of success stories that my staff have shared with me. We have helped secure T visas for 2 victims of human trafficking through coordination with legal aid. These are victims who were brought to the United States under false pretenses and ended up being sex trafficked and are going through the process to become legal citizens through their T visas. I should mention, that I did not already, nearly all of our services are also available in Spanish. A counselor just shared with me that a previous client that she was working with is now working at another domestic violence sexual assault agency in the western part of the state, helping survivors herself. One of our court advocates recently helped an elderly disabled male client file a protective order against a family member who assaulted him over the course of 7 hours. And he has also experienced a lot of financial abuse. We see this in elder abuse cases where, Grandpa, I'll pay the bills for you, and then all of a sudden they get access to accounts and money is gone and things of that nature. And this was a case where actually the financial abuse intersected with physical abuse. So June is Elder Abuse Awareness Month, so check in on your seniors and make sure that they're doing okay. I love the Are You OK program that's going on in Chowan County. I think that's fantastic. And I hope that everybody that works with that program knows that we're happy to serve victims of elder abuse as well. So those are some of the stories just over the past couple of months of some of the cases that we've seen come to positive endings. And something that really stuck with me is, like most businesses, we do some quality surveys when people are discharged from service. How did you hear about us, sort of a thing. And there was a young woman who stayed in our shelter, and on the question, how did you hear about Albemarle Hopeline, she said, I've always known about Albemarle Hopeline. And in 2021, Albemarle Hopeline will celebrate our 40th anniversary, which means that our communities have raised an entire generation that always had someone to turn to. And I just think that's amazing and speaks a lot about the caring of the communities that we serve. So I just want to leave you with one closing thought as a thank you for the support that you have invested. And I have tried to source this quote, so I'm sorry at this point, I just plagiarized it. But I really think it speaks a lot about the type of world that we want to live in. Every dollar we spend is a vote for the kind of world we want to live in. So your investment in survivors is showing that you want to live in a world of peace and hope, and where everyone can get the help that they need. So I will let you all get to your important business. Does anyone have any questions, concerns, feedback?
Are many of your referrals coming from hospital emergency room staff?
A fair amount, particularly with acute sexual assaults, although a lot of rape victims do not go to the hospital. We do get a lot of referrals through the national hotlines, and we try to make sure that our crisis line is plastered throughout the community, so more billboards and things of that nature. Lots of brochures. Don't be shy. Invite us to come and speak to anything. I can be less doom and gloom, I promise. But thank you so much for your support.
Thank you.
Thank you, Courtney, and thanks to all of your staff and your organization, your supporters, for the wonderful job you do in this region. We will continue our support and continue to hope, like you say, that you go out of business one of these days. That would be nice.
We do have a satellite office here in Edenton, so although the shelter itself is located in Elizabeth City, all of our other services, counseling, and advocacy are available right here to make it easier for people.
Very good.
Mayor, if I might just
Sure.
add, I was sharing with Courtney earlier that one of our police officers' wife is now a staff person with Albemarle Hopeline, and I told Courtney that I've always felt like law enforcement, in particular Edenton Police Department, have been very supportive of Hopeline and used that resource. But I can tell you that Chief King has put a real emphasis on training and awareness for the officers, and I see in the daily shift reports a lot of communication between officers and potential victims that they encounter, and making sure that that people are aware of Hope Line. So we hope to continue to build on that, and I know that Chief is a real proponent of Hope Line, and we appreciate all that you all do to help us and train the officers as well.
I'd like to reiterate that just because we've been around for 40 years, sometimes it's a little bit tempting to take us for granted, but we are still a private nonprofit and we thrive on this community support. So without that ongoing support, we wouldn't be able to keep our doors open. I do have an opening on my board of directors for a member from Chowan County. If anyone feels passionate about this work, please reach out to me. We can make that stewardship.
Very good. Thanks again.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
Our pleasure.
Slide in the low back here a little bit.
Thank you.
Okay, next item on our agenda, the Chowan Edenton Environmental Group has been in existence for a few years now, and the work that they're doing in our waterways as far as monitoring and keeping everyone up to speed as to our water quality and any changes that are taking place is their mission. And from what I know about their activities, they're very good at what they do, and I'm sure bring a lot of recognition and awareness to the people who need to not monitor but do something about it. So we're happy to have the group among us. And tonight, Colleen Carl with the Chowan Edenton Environmental Group is going to give us an update. As you all know, this warm weather summer that we have in this region does things to our waterways and to our bay and sound in the form of different types of algae developing and subsequent potential fish kills and a lot of bad stuff. So Colleen, if you would please, ma'am, come and let us hear from you. And again, thank you for all that you and your group are doing.
Thank you for having us here today. And thank you to the technical department for helping find the PowerPoint. That was great. I appreciate that. Steve has a couple of handouts there for anybody in the audience or anybody else that would like some of those as well. Make sure that I've got this under control here.
Thank you.
And you hit the nail on the head, Mayor Vaughn, by saying that this is the time of the year for the green stuff to appear. And certainly we're in for, with all the rain we've had, we're in for some surprises, I'm sure, in the next couple of weeks with how the algae bloom or they don't bloom. What I wanted to talk about today a little bit is sort of an update as to some of the grants that we've been working on to try to wrap our heads around a little bit better the science that's involved behind the algal blooms. And that said, there certainly is a lot of other things that can be done, but right now we're just basically trying to understand why they're here and maybe what we can do to mitigate that a little bit or lessen the effect in some way. So our mission is threefold. We've been around since 2007, and of course we've tried very hard to connect with the community in a lot of different ways, mostly by bringing educational programming and also partnering with agencies that have the lead scientists that are working in this field, and to try to present that information to our community in a very upstanding and scientific way. We've had a number of programs over the years, and I'm not going to go into any of those today because really I want to leave time for some questions at the end. So a lot of what we did changed in 2015. Some of you remember this wonderful bloom in the bay here. That prompted us to take some immediate action as to how we were going to pursue our endeavors as citizen scientists. And we are an all-volunteer group. A lot of us have science backgrounds, and that does help. But, we noticed that the algal bloom just didn't want to go away for, 5 or 6 weeks in 2015. So we connected with NOAA down in South Carolina, who they run it's called a phytoplankton monitoring network. And basically what they did was help us get some training on how to identify the algae that are in our waters, the blue-green algae. And with that, we took some steps to get some grant money to purchase a digital microscope. So once a week now in the summertime, we take pictures, send those off to NOAA down in South Carolina. They catalog those. And if there's a very, very extreme bloom, when there's 75% coverage on our slides and it's quite green, we send a physical bottle to them overnight so they can analyze it down there. We're also in partnership with a couple other agencies as well, but this particular network is really important because it's the only freshwater site right now in North Carolina. In the recent years, the last couple of years, we've been really busy trying to connect with a couple other agencies. We're working with Mark Powell on a grant right now, Clean Water Grant, to take a look at some of the nutrients and some of the things that are happening in Potocacy Creek, which is an east-west creek, very far north in the Chowan River, and also in the Chowan River itself. And that's been going on for 2 years now. And then this year in particular, we were just the recipients of a community collaborative, that's the CCRG, Community Collaborative Research Grant with UNC that's down in Morehead City to do a bioassay in Edenton Bay. And so really what I'd like to talk about today is what that's going to entail and hopefully what it's going to help us find out a little bit more about. So the bioassay, actually the title of the grant is it's a big long one, using citizen scientists to understand nutrient limitation of algal blooms on the Chowan River, filling critical data gaps and promoting community engagement. That's a lot of words for not a lot of work, but actually it is a lot of work. We have 3 objectives with this grant. The first one is actually to conduct 3 seasonal nutrient assays. And just briefly what that involves is, well, in a nutshell, we have 12 bottles that we stuff with different nutrients. 3 of them get nitrogen, 3 of them get phosphorus, 3 of them get nitrogen and phosphorus, and then there's 3 that are blank. And so we put them out in the bay for a couple of days and let them process kind of under normal conditions. And then we sent those samples off to analysis at the lab down at UNC. So what we're trying to find out is really what nutrients are causing these algae to go crazy. And we don't know that. We don't know if it's the nitrogen, we don't know if it's the phosphorus, or we don't know if it's both of those, or we don't know if it's none of those. So this will help us understand a little bit more about the seasonal changes that are occurring in the bay, because we don't think that it's the same thing for all seasons, and that's at least a hypothesis at this point. So really this will help us get a better handle on the science behind what's causing these algae to bloom, and maybe that'll help in the long run figure out what the strategies are to prevent that. The second objective is to engage the community in a number of different ways. We want to certainly get the word out. We're planning on several big community programs to share the results and some of the beginning work, because all this takes time to run these samples. But at least the people should be aware of what's going on and understand if they see something floating out in the middle of the bay, what it is, and maybe not hook it with a fishing line. But either that, to sort of explain to the people that we are interested in understanding this to a greater degree than we know now, and to help them get their heads wrapped around it too, because right now there's a lot of questions about what's happening out there. I hear a lot of people saying, what's going on? How come this is happening? How come, 30 years ago we had this problem, we got rid of it, actually 40 years ago. Why is it back? So I think there's a time and a place to actually engage the public and get them, better informed about what we know and what we don't know at this point. And the third piece is an educational piece. One of the very unique things about the type of algae that's growing out here in the bay, they have their own ability to make nitrogen. These are actually not algae, they're bacteria, they're very primitive organisms. And that said, when there's not enough nitrogen out there for them, some of them, and including the kinds that we find out here in the river, can make their own. So we're looking at ways to identify if there's a clue that in these particular cells, these little subcells that make this nitrogen, if whether or not that's helping us understand if that's a precursor of a bloom, or if it happens after a bloom, or if it happens during the bloom. We don't know. So the CEG actually has about 3.5 years of digital pictures that we would like to crowdsource. So our intention is to build a website with pictures on them and a form for somebody to fill out saying, oh yes, and actually you can see them in this picture, the little white spots. Those are the nitrogen fixing, I guess, suborgans, if you want to call them that allow these organisms to kind of take care of their own needs if they need it. So we're helping that the general public and certainly some teachers and some students will help us count those heterocysts by date and actually help maybe kind of pair that up with when the blooms happen or when they don't happen. So our partners are certainly many on this project. The CEG is doing a lot of the, obviously, physical work. The Town of Edenton Historical Edenton Commission, the Tron Herald, and all the other folks that have helped us get, we've put one array out already. It went out end of May. I'm trying to think of the date because we had a lot of rain in there. I think the 28th. We pulled it a couple of days later, and the samples are now down at UNC for analysis. The local schools, APNEP is helping us with some signage, and we'd like certainly your guidance and your input on what we should do with that sign and where we should put it to make the most impact. And NOAA, of course, is helping us big time with a lot of speakers and certainly a lot of knowledge as well. So with that, this is a real quick and fast overview of the work that the CEG is doing and all of our really valuable partners. Are there any questions for us?
About 4 years ago, we had an algae room out at Cape Colony, and up in the creek where people would take their boats up to the back of their homes. It seemed that the algae bloom was just up in the creek. And it got so bad that we sought the state to find out what could it do about getting rid of it. And we had to pay quite a bit of money for some kind of chemical they sprayed up in the creek. But and the hoping when the tide come in and go out, it will carry it out. So maybe it did. But now you can't even go on the beach this time of year because it's so bad.
Well, I think you've highlighted something that we're starting to recognize worldwide. This is a problem not just in Edenton Bay. It's not just in the Chuan River. It's everywhere. Researchers in all the states, the entire world actually are scratching their heads going, why now? Why are we seeing such an influx in these blue-green particular algae that have been around for hundreds and hundreds of thousands of years? But they've sort of reached a high point in their career, so to speak. They're really having a good time, and they're blooming all over the place. In some systems, some counties have it in the water supply. So I consider us very lucky in that we just have it right now in the Chuan River. And I think there's a lot of steps we can take, particularly in informing the public about ways that they can, just do things that in their house to kind of keep the nutrients from maybe going into the river. Don't put their grass clippings in the river, maybe clean out your septic tanks once in a while. Things that are just practical knowledge, compost and use that for fertilizer instead of putting, Miracle-Gro on your lawns. So there's a lot of things that we can do to help educate and just be prudent about the fact that this is a river that we'd like to have for our use for a long time. And so we're going to have to take some steps to make sure that happens. So yeah, you bring up a good point. Things have sort of picked up in the last couple of years with the algal blooms.
Are the scientists going, I'm not saying they're going to because that's an experiment, but do you think it's going to get worse before it gets better?
I don't know. I really don't. I think I've seen the last 4 years, some years a lot worse than others. It goes in spurts. If I could predict when it's going to happen, I'd certainly let DEQ know that. I don't know. I mean, and sometimes it does happen when the wind is down because, as you know, these are surface organisms, so they blow around a lot. They're going to go down as far as the light can reach. And so if there's a wind, sometimes it shows up over on Coleraine side, and sometimes it's over on our side, and you can actually see that from satellites. As a matter of fact, we're using some satellites to help us. It's an experimental project, but at least we can kind of tell a little bit ahead of time where these things are going. going and maybe get our heads wrapped around where we shouldn't be going fishing or, swimming that particular day. Yeah, it's a really good question as to whether we're going to solve the problem quickly or not. I do want to emphasize, too, that there's another CCRG Community Collaborative grant that was awarded for the Chowan system, and this pleases me to no end to know that a lot of research and a lot of attention is going towards this area, and that grant is to Dr. Astrid Schnitzer, I always say her name wrong, but she's a really wonderful gal at NC State, and her grant is working with marine fisheries, and they're actually going to be taking some fish samples and running those for analysis. So while our grant is more nutrient-based to see sort of like what nutrients these algae are using, hers is a little bit more refined to look at some of the things that are concentrating in the tissues of the fish and the shellfish that are in the area. But both of those were awarded this year through this foundation, that NCC grant, and let's see who else, it's the Water Resources Institute and the Keenan Institute. Those are the three funders for this particular grant project. So yeah, there aren't any simple answers. We appreciate all the help that you guys give to, and Anne-Marie as well, to helping steer us and helping guide us and doing the right thing for this community. We'll be glad to do the legwork and, connect with the agencies that we need to, but, helping support that is really important as well. So we do appreciate that.
Thank you.
Colleen, if I could, how far south, well, excuse me, not south, east, how far east have y'all seen it already this year? Is Edenton Bay about as far?
Okay, so Edenton Bay is really our sample location for this grant, and there was a reason for picking that. It's all over right now, not entirely covering the entire river, but as I said, it's wind-driven at this point. So what we're seeing is small pop-up blooms. Arrowhead Beach has had a bunch. Chowan Beach has had some. I haven't heard any serious reports over in Coleraine, but I have seen, and for the first time I saw somebody reported some at Harvey's Point. The Little River has got a lot upstream, on the satellites at least, upstream, way upstream in the Perquimans River. So in all areas I'm seeing a lot of stuff popping up, but it's pretty early to call it a pervasive bloom. Not like what we see in August where it's so thick you could kind of walk across the water on it. This is more, little pop-ups, and a lot of that has to do with it. The water gets warm enough, it's pocketed, there's enough nutrients there, and the algae just say, great, it's time to bloom, so they like all that, but at this point it isn't taken over the whole river yet. Yeah.
I know yesterday, just east of the Chowan River on the Bertie side, there was, you could see some algae, but today it was all gone.
Right.
So
Right. Well, we pulled samples this morning, actually, and we were looking at the scope and taking pictures. We didn't see any at Arrowhead. Those are in our shoreline samples that we take.
Right.
Didn't see any at Edenton Town Dock. Didn't see any out at the Fish and Wildlife Dock. Those are our 4 sites. And the third site, actually, is the Chowan River Bridge, and we did see stuff there, okay? So basically, and it's not highly concentrated at this point. It's kind of, filaments here and filaments there, a little bit of mixed samples on both. The 2 kinds that we see are Anabina, it's really stringy looking. Even under the microscope it looks like that. Even the water it looks like that. And then the other stuff that kind of looks like grass cuttings in the water is Microcystis. We've seen both of that so far this year. So it's, at this point I would say it's very sporadic. That's the reason for the seasonal assay, because we know that there's differences between the spring, the summer, and the fall in terms of how these algae appear and how much of them appear. And so we want to be able to get a better idea of how much nutrients they're using and what kinds of nutrients during those particular seasons. So, yeah. Anyhow, anything else?
One quick question. Do you see or get reports of this kind of water problems in the rest of the estuary as you go from the Albemarle to the Croatan to the Currituck to the Pamlico? As the water gets more salty, does it go away?
I don't think it goes away. There's pretty good strong evidence that these guys can survive almost anything. I hate to say that, but they've been around for a long time. Yeah, so and I actually think there's a lot of research that's happening that will indicate that we don't see the blooms because we're not all over. We don't have eyes everywhere, and nobody does. So I think that there's a good body of evidence that's coming pretty soon, probably from space imagery, from satellite imagery, to tell us a little bit more about where some of these blooms are showing up and how they're migrating. Yes. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you, Colleen, and to all your volunteers.
Thank you.
Wonderful work.
Mayor, if I may,
Sure.
just today we received an advisory, or an advisory was issued by the state, by DEQ, regarding, telling people to be careful, be aware, stay out of the blooms that have been confirmed in the Chowan River, also in the Perquimans River and Pasquotank. And we'll be posting that advisory on the town's webpage. The unfortunate thing about the state advisories is they don't expire. They don't tell you when, the bloom goes away. So it's really up to the individual who's on the water to be knowledgeable, to be informed, and to beware. So we're going to try this year to make sure that the advisories are publicized more heavily and that our citizens can rely on us as a kind of a conduit for information. So.
Thank you.
We would like to thank the street department, Public Works, for helping us deploy the 12 bottles. It really helped.
It was a big thing.
All right. Very
Go,
good.
Corey.
Do you want me to take that off?
Yeah, please. All right, moving down through our agenda now, we've arrived at item 6, which is a series of 3 public hearings. The first of which is the proposed budget for the upcoming fiscal year 2019-2020. The budget has been drafted. It's been presented to us as members of the council. It's also been posted on our website. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay, and the advertisement for the public hearing was in the newspaper, giving the community appropriate notice that this will soon be under review for us to vote up or down. So tonight, our first public hearing is going to be on that subject, and the floor will be open to anyone who has questions or comments about the budget. We will not take any action tonight because we need to hear from you all first. So with that bit of background, Anne Marie, is there anything else I need to add to that?
Would you like me to just give a brief overview,
Please.
Mayor?
Yeah,
Okay.
that would be great.
I'm happy to report that the budget, as recommended to the council, calls for the tax rate to remain the same, no increase in our tax rate. And I think it's important to note that our general fund, which makes up the services that you would consider our traditional municipal services, police, fire, streets, sanitation, that budget is actually less. What's recommended this coming year is $108,000 less than what the current budget is for this year. So I think that shows you that it's a very tight budget. When I was working with Virginia, we rely heavily on information that Chowan County Tax Office provides us to calculate how much tax revenue is going to be available. And I think I used the word stunned in my budget message to the council that the the personal property total for this coming fiscal year was $3.9 million less than in the current year. Fortunately, there was a $3.6 million increase in real property. So there was technically about a $300,000 less in total property that's being listed on the tax books in the upcoming budget. And a couple of reasons for that, primarily one, the Simpson Strong building, that business closed, and that was a very reliant heavily on machines, and the very valuable machines that gone from the tax books. Also, we had several airplanes that were sold, and we lost that value. And then interesting too was pointed out by the tax supervisor that the telephone companies, their value, their properties continue to decrease dramatically. There was almost a $600,000 decrease in their values. The good news is that we had some expansions, industrial expansions, that help offset those losses. And the really good news is, and I'm optimistic that when we're back here next year, this time looking at the budget, there will be more tax dollars or more ratables for you to see based on expansions that either have taken place and didn't get listed or are underway and will be finished. So optimistic that you're going to see the trend increase. But I did want to point out to the public that to draft a budget where you're already, quote, in the hole and not have a tax increase, I think is a testament to the staff really being, I want to say, realistic and thoughtful in their requests to you. No tax increase, that's the good news. However, we are recommending 2 user fee increases. One would be a permanent increase, and that would be $1 per month increase to the residential solid waste and recycling fee. That's a monthly fee, so $1 a month would increase 12 months, and that would generate about $20,000 to $25,000 that is needed to pay for contract work that's required to be done now at our yard waste disposal site. And thanks to Corey Gooden and Public Works for all of their hard work. After Hurricane Matthew, the state, it was determined that the town needed to have a permit to operate our yard waste site, and the requirements of the permit are quite rigorous. Corey would be glad to give you a tour and show you what the monitoring requirements are, but the bottom line is that once a year now going forward, we're going to have to hire a contractor to come in and grind and grub and get rid of a certain amount of that yard waste, and we estimate that to cost about $20,000. And that yard waste site, the yard waste is generated by through our residential collection program, so that user fee is recommended only to go on our residential customers' bill. The other user fee is a temporary 1-year fee, 50 cents a month for the residential customers, $2 a month for our small commercial customers, and $5 for our large commercial customers. And this will generate about $20,000 that is needed for a one-time improvements or modifications at the sanitation's transfer station. And that will allow Public Works to increase capacity or expand capacity to be able to transport the solid waste to the landfill by having more capacity, making hopefully fewer trips, less fuel costs, and less wear and tear on the vehicles. Again, that would only be for 1 year to pay for those improvements. The budget also includes priorities that the council has set, continuing to fund our neighborhood redevelopment zones, the work that Elizabeth is doing. We've also included funding. We have our fingers crossed that we are going to get a fellow through the NC fellowship program, and that person would be tasked with assisting Elizabeth and helping us with policy and research to help expand the work that we're doing with community development and in the redevelopment zones. The budget also includes funds to implement or continue the implementation of the communications marketing plan that the council approved this fiscal year, where the goal is to grow the population, grow Edenton's population, attract new entrepreneurs and mobile workers to the community. That's basically the general fund. The electric fund, we will have a wholesale rate increase, and that is going to require a 1.5% increase on our retail rates. We're excited about our new director starting in July, coming on board, and one of his priorities will be to kickstart and re-energize our load management program, which will give our customers hopefully the opportunity to offset a portion of that rate increase. Council will have some decisions to make about the water and sewer fund regarding rates. The plan is in 2021 that we will have to budget for debt service to pay for the upgrades and renovations to the water treatment plants. And the question is, do you want to go ahead and implement a portion of that rate increase now and then do the rest of it in 2021? I know in years past the council has resisted. I think the phrase was, they did not want to take money out of the customers' pockets until we had to pay the bill. So that will be a decision that council will make when they review the budget. In our stormwater and power bill fund, we've included funding to continue with the improvements to the East Water Street stormwater pump station, as well as improvements that are needed to a stormwater outlet on Pembroke Circle, and then also drainage improvements that will help Tyler Lane, Oakdale Drive, and Old Hertford Road. Real quick, the airport fund, it gives me great pleasure to say that this budget does not include a transfer from the general fund. And my hat's off to you, tip of the cap to the council for persevering and hanging in there and being strong with the state and getting that DOT lease agreement finalized, because that is really going to put the airport on a good path forward. I can't wait to tell the LGC that it looks like even this fiscal year, fingers crossed, Virginia, the airport fund may have a little bit of a surplus. And speaking of Virginia, I just want to give a shout out to her and the work that she has done. She has captured every possible revenue stream. She's identified every expense item and has been working with the department heads to make sure that everything is properly documented. And I think that the requests that were made by the department heads were thoughtful and sensible, and that's how we were able to put together a budget that doesn't have a tax increase, but still provides for level of services that our customers are demanding and expecting. So Mayor, we'll be in touch shortly with the Finance Committee to set up review times for you. The budget and the budget message are posted on the town's webpage, and there is a hard copy available also at Town Hall.
Thank you, Anne-Marie, for a very thorough summary of the upcoming proposed budget. That's pretty good work for a lady who's supposed to be home recovering from surgery. Well, thank you to you and to Virginia and all of the department heads and employees who contribute to that effort to keep the budget such as it is. And we'll see how it goes when it goes to committee and then comes back for a vote. So now, with that bit of background, which was a lot, I hope those of you who are here tonight that would like to speak on the subject of our budget have been enlightened a little bit, and so I'll open the floor for comments about that proposed document. If anybody would like to speak, please take the podium and identify yourself, please. Floor is open. Okay, seeing no one coming forward, we'll close the public hearing with respect to the budget. And we'll take further action once we complete the review by the Finance Committee and then discussion by the council on some of the items that Anne Marie articulated in her summary.
Anne Marie, one quick question on
Sure.
the yard debris and everything that we're going to hire a company to come in here and grind that up or whatever. Will that be put anywhere where it grinds up like in mulch, where people could get some mulch from it or something?
Yeah, so we'll be able to blend that with any of the material that we'll keep on site. Also help us stay in compliance for the mulch that we're processing and actually making on site. That is readily available.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Good. Any other questions or comments before we go to the next hearing? Okay, thank you. The next public hearing tonight is relative to the USDA Rural Development Funding applications application that we are submitting for street repair and resurfacing. We'll need to vote to approve the funding application to USDA, and it's pretty urgent, right?
Yes, sir. We're on a tight time frame, so.
So if you would give us a little bit of a backdrop to that as well.
Sure. Be happy to, Mayor. We've been working with USDA on an application that would provide funding in the form of a low-interest loan, a 20-year loan, to do repairs and then resurfacing of about 8 of our streets. And these streets have been evaluated by our consulting engineer and ranked. And this is the Phase 2. We're looking at Johnston Street, Oakdale Drive, the 100 block of East Hick Street, Batham Road, East Eden, East Queen, West and East Freemason, 3rd Street, East Carteret, and Jackson Street. The estimated cost of the project, including engineering and contingencies, is approximately $950,000. There's a slight chance we may get a little bit of grant money. When we met with USDA, they weren't all that encouraged. But if the council, after the public hearing tonight, votes to submit the application, Virginia's ready to submit the final paperwork tomorrow, and we should hear something hopefully within 30 days. The LGC is coming to meet with us next week. They'll be here to meet with Virginia and I, because we'll have to go to the LGC once we get the bids. When USDA approves, then we go out to bid, and then we have to go to the LGC. And so we are lining things up to go before the LGC in September, Virginia. And then the contractors would be able to hopefully start paving September, October. Hopefully they'll be finished by then, but could do it in November. So that's our schedule. And I did also want to mention, Mayor, because we're waiting any day now for the state to approve the engineering plans for the sewer rehab project. And by chance, by good luck really, that project is going to fund the overlay of a few of the streets that are on that Phase 2 priority list. So we were able to take them off the USDA list, and we'll be able to use the funding from the sewer rehab project. And those streets are Wood Avenue, East King, Morris Circle, and Stratford Road. And we're hoping that work will take place this summer as well.
Very good. And again, with that backdrop,
Mayor,
yes,
there is a part of 2nd Street that goes between Batham Road and Stratford. Would this be taken care of in that Phase 2? So it's very small.
We'll look at that.
Okay.
Yep. I'll make a note and look at that.
Yeah.
Sure.
It's not very long at all, but it's right in between Batham and Stratford.
Yep.
Okay, having heard our manager's report relative to this item for public comment, I'll open the floor again for anybody who wants to speak either in support of or in opposition to or has questions about what you just heard relative to the grant proposal or the 20-year low-interest loan proposal that was just presented. And I might add that just from listening to business news, the Federal Reserve is not going to be raising rates anytime soon, so we need to go after these low-cost dollars for as long as we can to keep our streets in good repair. And I think that's one of the best moves as far as the economy of getting it done, the affordability to get it done, and our ability to amortize these loans at a low-cost time of money is going to really benefit all of us in the community with a much better street, what do you call it, inventory or something, than we would have ever hoped to get had we tried to figure out ways other than borrowing money to continue to make improvements here and improvements there with power bill funds. So this is a great project. I'm glad we're continuing it through another phase, and I hope the council will take up yet another phase while the cost of money is as low as it is. So, floor is open. Anybody like to comment? Okay. Seeing no one, I'll close the public hearing. And council, that puts us in a position whereby we can approve to submit the funding application to USDA.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, motion and a second to do so. Any further comments or questions?
Just one question, Mayor.
Yeah.
And I thought about this after reading all this. Is there any way we can reduce the years, the terms? I mean, 20 years, unfortunately, those streets that we're paving are going to need paving long before 20 years is up, I'm sure. And I hate for us to, if there's a way that we can take care of it in less time, I hate for us to have something out there that's worn out that we're still paying on and then have to repave it. So,
We can look at that. As a matter of fact, when we talked to you at the Finance Committee meeting about the water treatment plant debt service, that was a 40-year loan, but we've amortized it, or we're recommending that you do it over 30 years. So USDA does allow for early payment without a penalty. But I will say that these streets are similar to most of the streets that we did with the first surge, in that it's repair. We've got to dig out the bad soils.
Like Hick Street?
Yes. And the thought is, and we can bring Derek when he comes and reviews the bids with you, is that these streets are going to last a long time. But I'm with you on if we can amortize it over 15 years instead of 20 or 12 years, certainly look at that.
I would hope so. I mean, it's kind of like buying a car and paying on it 10 years and it's worn out at 5,
Yeah.
you know. Thank you much.
I thought that some of these streets belong to the state.
Not any of these.
These streets are town streets. There are a number of streets in town that the state maintains. And we've been talking to them about trying to do some repair and overlay on a couple of those streets.
Now, I know a lot of them do need to be repaired.
But these streets are our streets, so, yeah.
Corey, you may know this. Will this phase 2 take care of the high priority streets that were identified and we move to the next level yet, or are we already going into the next level with
No,
this?
this would finalize the priority one.
They get rid of all the priority one. That's great. Okay. Very good.
So Lee Street and, was it Barker? They were all part of the first surge?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. And those were ones that were run in-house.
contractor, not through bond.
Gotcha.
In-house funding.
Okay, we have a motion floating around out here, so does anybody have anything further they'd like to say or question?
I think this is great. Way to go.
All right, all in favor of submitting the application, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, no? All right, very good. And finally, under our public hearings for this evening, rural development funding application for fire mobile command vehicle and police vehicles.
Mayor,
Please,
quickly, we're hopeful that this pot of money will enable the town to receive a grant. Hopefully, in the past, we've received 50% grant money. This application is for $150,000. So hopefully we could get, 70, 75,000 in grants and then have to do a loan with USDA for the balance. But this project would fund the purchase of a fire mobile command vehicle, and that need was identified after Hurricane Matthew and also after an incident that happened with carbon monoxide poisoning, where the fire chief was the incident command in charge of the incident. And this vehicle would be equipped with the tools and the technology for the fire department to be able to respond to those types of incidences and others as well. And then also the purchase of 3 police vehicles to replace 3 older vehicles. And the plan, as you saw, would be to purchase traditional 4-door sedan police vehicles. So if, after the public hearing, if you approve the application, we are ready to upload and submit the final application to USDA.
Very good. All right. Once again, I'll open the floor to the public for comment relative to our effort to purchase new vehicles for our fire department and our police department. Anybody would like to speak? Okay, seeing no one, we'll close that public hearing, which would conclude the public hearings that we have scheduled for this evening. And I'd ask the council now to bring forward a motion to submit that application.
Can I ask just one question? When she
Sure.
says sedan, we're not buying Explorers again?
No, we're going to switch it up, right, Chief?
Ford Interceptor from the Fire Ford over there.
Okay. All
We're
right.
getting good feedback on the Explorers, but the 4 doors are a little bit less expensive, and so we're going to try those as well.
Okay.
That's interesting, because riding in this morning, I was listening to the radio, and Ford has announced a new series of, what do they call them?
Ford Interceptors?
Yeah, the Ford, no, I'm talking about the Explorers. They have a new one that has 3 choices of power, and it's they are the biggest provider or seller of police vehicles in the United States. So we're working with a good product.
What mileage do you look at for replacement? What top mileage? Is that pretty much?
800,000.
When the garage at Corey's comes forward and says, we can't do it anymore.
If I might, Mayor, really, in all honesty, during the recession, this council tried so hard to hold the line. I mean, we bought used highway patrol cars for a number of years. I think that it was probably, I wish I could remember the last time we bought a new car was like in 2012. But it got to the point where we need to go ahead and update the fleet. And
Gotcha.
thankfully, there's, this USDA program has helped a lot.
Okay.
Someone got to buy Ford.
All right. Well, thank you all. That was interesting to hear about on all 3 of those items. Moving now to committee reports from our committee meeting.
Vote.
We didn't vote.
Did we not vote?
Didn't
Make a
vote.
motion.
Okay. We got a motion. Did we have a second?
Second.
Okay. Any further questions or comments? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, no. Thank you very much. Now to committee reports coming forward from our committee meeting session. And we'll hear first from our Utilities Committee, and that's chaired by Councilman Bond, please, sir.
Thank you, Mayor. We only have one item. It is recommended that the council adopt the resolution approving the final application for the NC Industrial Development Fund grant for Peanut Drive Water Main Loop Project. If you remember in our last committee meeting, Corey gave us a beautiful description of what was going to take place. And do anyone else on this committee have anything? If not, I just want to send it forward to the council to vote on.
By all means.
Okay, would you put that in the form of a motion?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Do we have a second?
Second.
All right. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, no.
That's going to end right there on Paradise and Dillard, is that right? That line, okay.
This is yet another step in our effort to address water quality issues that we've been dealing with in our potable water system here in the town of Edenton. So this should help a lot, keep that flow going out in that part of town. Plus the pressure issue for firefighting and so forth. All right. Next item would be a report from the Finance Committee, and that's chaired by Councilman Dixon, please.
So we have two things on tonight. The first one is recommend the council approve the American Tower Land Lease Amendment for the cell tower at the wastewater treatment plant as presented, and I'll put that in the form of a motion.
Second.
Motion and a second to approve the tower lease agreement as presented. Further questions or comments? All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Any opposed, no? All right.
And secondly, we have is recommended the council approve the budget amendment for the municipal building roof repair that we talked about in last meeting, and I'll put that in the form of a motion.
Second.
Motion and a second to fix the roof. Any further questions, comments? All right, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, no? Very good. Moving to new business now. Anne Marie, would you discuss those two items for us?
I will, Mayor,
with
and
us?
council is familiar with disaster services agreement. As a member of Electricities, the town is able to piggyback onto contracts that Electricities bids on our behalf for power restoration services. And those contracts have recently been rebid. There are 4 contracts or 4 contractors that we would be able to choose from or solicit help in the event of a disaster. And I recommend that the council authorize us to execute those 4 agreements.
Okay, Chair will entertain a motion to that effect.
So moved.
Second.
Any questions or comments?
I'd like to ask, I heard that the American Legion Post 40 used to be designated as an emergency place that people could go because it's the highest elevation in Edenton. Is that still in effect or what?
I'd have to talk to our emergency management coordinator. I don't know if they are formally designated as, I know they're not a shelter, but I can talk with Cord and find out about what the post.
EC said they used to be.
They used to be, okay.
But I don't know.
Yeah,
But he said they used to be.
okay. We can check into that.
Okay.
Any other questions or comments about the emergency restoration repair? All in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, no. Very good. I'll tell you what, it's quite a sight, and I know you've all seen it, living where we do. When these storms come ashore and you're going from point A to point B in your car or truck or whatever, and you see 10 or 12 bucket trucks coming from another town, going to a town that has been devastated by some natural disaster.
It's a good-looking sight.
It is a wonderful looking sight, yeah.
Then we see a stream of them coming over the Chowan River.
Yeah, it's,
Here comes the Calvary.
yeah, here comes the cavalry. Okay, item B, please, ma'am, legal services.
Mayor, going back to the two USDA projects that you authorized us to apply for, part of the application process, USDA requires a legal services agreement from the town attorney to be approved by the council. And Hood Ellis has submitted legal services agreement, and I don't know how he can do this work for, he says, $780 per application. That seems like a real bargain to me. But if the council will approve those two agreements, that will be part of the documentation that we'll submit to USDA tomorrow.
Chair will entertain a motion to that
So
effect.
moved.
Second.
Thank you. Questions or comments?
Sign it before we change his mind.
Yeah.
It's right, quickly.
All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed, no. All right, we can send that package forward. Very good. Okay, council members, we've reached items timely and important that you have heard about or are concerned about personally. So if you have anything you'd like to share with us, please do so.
DOT made a decision on Broad Street yet, as far as resurfacing Broad. Was that ever an issue brought up way back when?
I'll have to reach out to them and find out what the schedule is for resurfacing.
Because I think you mentioned that back then too, it might be a good time to put in those optional crosswalks. So I'm just wondering, is that within the next year or?
We'll get,
I just talked with one of the folks from DOT today, and he didn't know, it's Brooks, right?
yes.
He didn't know exactly when, but it was going to be within the next calendar cycle, is what he said.
Okay.
It
Well,
sounded
good,
like, and
good.
they had already planned to include our request for the crosswalk.
Okay, good.
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 Thank you, Elizabeth.
Mayor, the other thing was the speed cushions, or I understand we're getting ready to put those down.
They were delivered or received recently, and Corey's reading the manual, and we're trying to figure out.
So those came in last week, and right now we're just trying to make sure we got everything that we need to install them and determine the appropriate location.
Great.
Anyone else have anything you'd like to bring forward?
Mayor, I want to thank Corey's group for certainly helping the town do something that the county should be doing that probably the state should be paying for. In taking care of the courthouse green this past week, I was out doing some work on it, and lo and behold, here they came, and certainly were a big help, and had a lot of people in town this weekend that have already booked rooms for the Christmas tour for the coming year, and are looking forward to coming back. So they couldn't love Edenton any more than we do. We had a lot of people from Charleston and a lot of people from Nash County area, and they just absolutely fell in love with it. So kudos to everybody that smiled and waved. They thought we were the friendliest town they had ever been.
Good. Good.
All right, thanks for that.
And Emery, speaking of the courthouse, the street behind the courthouse that runs through the parking lot there, who is responsible for that? Is it the town or the county?
It's the town, and we've been waiting, hopefully, for the hotel project to become a reality, and then we'll work on that. But I know Corey has some patching and paving money that's going to be hopefully approved as part of the budget in July 1, and we'll get some work done there again.
Okay. That it from here? All right, ladies and gentlemen, anybody have any items that you haven't heard discussed tonight that you would like to bring to the attention of the Edenton Town Council? Please take the podium and let us hear from you. Okay, seeing no one, we'll close the public comment period for this month, and Chair will take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
All in favor, aye. All right, we stand adjourned. Thank y'all very much. Appreciate you.